tap it just once and a green light
Yeah.
comes on. The commission is installing a new system. We're upgrading all our television cameras and whatnot because eventually we're going to, in the near future, put these all up on the internet and televise them and all that kind of stuff. So I was surprised this morning when I talked to a staff person. I said, "You going to come in?" He goes, "No, I'm going to go upstairs and watch it." I'm like, "Really? I didn't know we're that far down the line yet." So it's recorded. The mics are live. So just everybody be aware of that.
Call the meeting to order, and we'll have roll call, please.
Oops, that's me. You're doing the
She
roll
does the
call?
Yes, ma'am. Renata Evans,
Present.
Gloria Ross,
Present.
Barbara Rogel Miller,
Present.
Hebert Massey has requested to be excused, Don Lee Cotton,
He said present to be excused.
Well, he's kind of auditing the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Don Lee Cotton,
Present.
Maria Lambert,
Present.
Lily LaHaley,
Present.
Tim Killeen,
That'd be me.
and Elizabeth Mezaraka.
Here, present.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
Motion.
I'll support that.
Motion by Marie, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, motion carried.
You're not voting, Hubert.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Approval of the minutes of the September 16th meeting.
Yeah, the minutes were attached.
Did everyone have time to read them? Take a few moments.
Madam Chair, may I comment on the minutes?
Yes?
You'll see in the minutes that we had talked about having our meeting in December, dealing with some of the bylaws on the agenda. So I think when we get to the end of the agenda today, it's a one item for the special meetings under other matters. We should establish the next date for our Art Authority Board meeting then. Sorry? Well, I think so, but now that we're having one in November, if there's a December date, we'll see if everybody's still good with that, and just to verify all of that. I'll move to approve the minutes, Madam Chair.
Any support?
I'll support it.
Moved by Tim Killeen, supported by Barbara Rogel Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried. Consideration of placing the DIA millage on the March 2020 ballot. Let's open this for discussion, and I believe, Tim?
Madam Chair, in getting this together, because this was the second date that we tried to have this meeting, I discussed with the folks at the DIA that what I'd like them to do is to come in and make the case for going to the ballot, and then we can discuss after that. But I would like to hear from the DIA why going to the ballot, why renewal, all of that, and then I think it'd be appropriate to go into discussion from there, if that's what the group thinks.
Is there any opposition to that? Okay, please. Any opposition at all? Okay, please.
Madam Chairman, Gene Gargaro, the chair of the board of the DIA, and Mr. Vice Chair, we're very, very pleased to be able to be here this morning and present our rationale for asking the authority to place the millage renewal on the March 10, 2020 ballot. Before I ask Salvador and Dave Flynn to present that rationale, I just would want to mention some of you were here, I can't believe it was 8 or 9 years ago when we first started talking about how important citizen support from Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County was for the DIA. In those days, if you recall, in 2010, we were just coming out of a financial crisis in the city. The state of Michigan had stopped funding cultural institutions, and the city of Detroit as well. So we were fortunate to be able to meet with the leaders in Wayne and Oakland and Macomb County and explain the benefits both ways to the museum certainly and to the citizens of the three counties from what was then a very groundbreaking kind of thing for museums. The Detroit Zoo, of course, had preceded us with a millage similar to that. We were able to work with the leadership there and learn a lot about the process that they went through, but the structure that we've been working on so successfully for the last 8 years was formulated in this room. And before we get into what we want to do next year with the renewal, I think all of us are here to thank you for giving us the opportunity you've given us over the past 8 years. I think we've demonstrated that what we said we could do, we've done and exceeded in many instances. So again, we're here to present the reasoning and the data that we hope will support your affirmative vote to let us continue in the same framework. With that said, I'd like to ask Dave Flynn, who heads up our public affairs activities at the DIA, to make his remarks, and I'm sure Salvador will follow. And obviously, any questions any of you have, we would welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gene. And the chair and the vice chair of the committee, the Art Authority, asked that we put together a business case and information to make sure that you have as much of the data, the statistics that are needed to make an informed decision, and hopefully to earn the right to go for another millage. In your package, you have a letter to the Art Authority that was mailed to you and is before you today. We put together a tri-county report that's pretty detailed, that outlays the last 8 years and things that have happened at the museum and some of the achievements that were made. And then in the information sheet you have, basically goes over straightforward things. You know, what is the length of the millage? What is the rate of the renewal requested? How much does it cost an average taxpayer? What's the deadline? Millage funds? And so forth. And we're happy to answer any questions in regards to that, or if there's some items we did not address, we're happy to do that. We also included our millage brochure that includes all the services that we have in the 3 counties, as well as the Wayne County Community Engagement Report from the previous year. On a lot of meetings that we come out to 3 times a year, we get into real detail on what schools and what projects we've done. And what we really want to do is just give a high-level overview to show the impact that hopefully the DIA has had in your communities over the past 8 years. And so if you'll see on the screen and in the package, you have a PowerPoint. Obviously, there's 4 pillars to our service agreements: free admission, our educational and K through 12 program, our seniors group visits, and our community partnerships. And think about it. Close to 1 million people have been able to visit the DIA for free admission since 2012. That's an enormous task that we've undertaken, and that has really improved access to all walks of life, regardless of how much money you make or what geography you're from. You have one of the top 5 museums at your fingertips, free of charge because of this millage. When you look at school trips, over 219,000 Wayne County students have received a curriculum-based field trip at the museum. We work with school districts all across the area to make sure that these are relevant school field trips that have to do with their core curriculum. And this isn't just art. This is history, this is science, this is math, this is English. And we provide 100% of the bus transportation. Even if we were able to provide free admission, if we didn't provide the transportation component, a lot of these school districts wouldn't be able to do that. And when you break down that 219,000, about half of those come from the city of Detroit each year. We also make sure that we're touching teachers and making sure that we're providing them with the latest professional development for art and culture and critical thinking skills. And we've had over 10,000 teachers in Wayne County schools come down and bring that back to their classroom for that professional development. And some of that they're able to use for their certification for the state of Michigan for their teaching degrees. And we put together a quick video. We do not have videos since we don't have, but we've put together wonderful K through 12 field trip video that we're sharing with our school districts so they understand what the experience is and how transformative it is for the students. When you look at senior trips, almost 500 senior groups from across Wayne County have been able to come to the museum and experience a tour, a film theater, a lecture, a bingo activity, or something that's different like music or live performances. And our Inside Out program, which are reproductions, we've been in 157 places throughout the county. And we're proud that this is a partnership that's continuing to grow and something that people are really appreciative of having art in their local downtowns or their parks or their trails, etc. And on our nonprofit or on our community partnership sides with nonprofits, we've invested more than $5.5 million back into the community to be at fairs and festivals. Public art is a big new thing here, and we're able to do these large projects in the community that will last for generations for kids and grandkids. And it's really important that we put things in the community, we work with local partners, and this is really a relationship and a partnership. This isn't the DIA putting things in people's neighborhoods. This is us working with local leaders to make that happen. And so we're happy to answer any questions. Unfortunately, those videos didn't work, but we will email you the links after so you can see what we're trying to communicate with the public. And this part of this presentation was to make sure that you have all the information possible to make an informed decision and that we're being as transparent as possible from our side. And so I think Salvador will conclude our remarks today, and we're happy to answer any questions after that.
I think we're going to get Wi-Fi.
Or maybe we can watch some of the videos that are beautiful.
Are you going to be able to do that, Octavia?
I believe so, Commissioner.
Just so folks know, Octavia Hunter here is going to be keeping the minutes and whatnot. The Right Reverend Darcel Brown has left the commission to go work for the executive and the administrative. So Octavia Hunter is the staff person. And while I'm here, I don't know if everybody remembers Sherry Kalgerakis from the Allen Law Firm, who we've hired to be the attorney for the Arts Authority Board.
And with us today, one other additional person who's not typically here is Rob Bowen, who's our Chief Financial and Operating Officer at the museum.
That's good that you brought him. I think that's
Of course. Any questions that you might have
I
about?
don't have any questions, but I think this is probably out of order. But you know that we like the program, and I know I like it personally. This program has changed the museum from a building, a wall that has art hanging on it, to a building that's full of life.
I couldn't agree more,
That's to me.
Mr. Chairwoman. So, you know, that was how I was going to start my remarks today.
I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. and the reality is that this millage has changed the culture of the organization. And when it was passed in 2012, we didn't really know what this millage was going to signify for the museum. We thought it was just going to support our yearly operation, but it's done much more than that. And as I mentioned, changed the culture of the organization. We used to be a museum, generally speaking, that was looking inwards. Now we are an organization that is looking outwards, and that we are going beyond the walls of the museum, serving the communities, providing great programs through Inside Out, through our student free field trips, through our senior program, and all the community partnership programs that we have developed. We have become a tool for the community. We are a tool for the community, and I know through many different reports that we are changing people's lives. People are coming to us. They love the DIA, and it's just more than art. We are more than a museum. We are a gathering place for everyone. We're making huge efforts to be accessible, and we're making huge efforts to be as welcoming institution as we can. I have museum directors from all over the world coming to the DIA to see how this partnership with Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb County works, because it's a model for everyone. It's really amazing. I have to say that Wayne County, that Oakland County, and that Macomb County have made this museum a leader in education in the country. We are part of the comeback of the Southeast Michigan. is just unbelievable. And we are able to provide exhibitions, experiences that nobody can find in the internet or in books or in TV. And I just want to give an example of this. Yesterday, we opened an exhibition called Detroit Collects Selections of African American works from private collections in Detroit. And this is something that we have built with the community. When I moved to Detroit 4 years ago, I started to go around, go to public events, to programs, and meet the local artists in Detroit, meet the local collectors. And I met Judy Bowman, who is a wonderful artist, was recently showing her art in Miami, Basel. And she's from Detroit. And she told me, you know, Salvador, I was with my wife, there is this place in Livernois Avenue called Noni's. It's a diner. And every morning we meet there, and a group of artists from Detroit show their art, a couple of pieces, explain it to collectors who are there, and also to people who are passionate about the arts. And I went there. And known is now the Breakfast Club, which is the famous group that now is all over the press, and that meets at the DIA 2 Mondays per year. So we are part of the story as well. Was impressive. And this was the kind of cultural energy that in Spain, where I was born, you could find in cafes in the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, where artists and writers would gather and talk about art and, you know, think and present great examples of creativity. So the museum went there, I was there, I talked to the Breakfast Club, and from that gathering came out this exhibition that we just opened yesterday. This allowed the museum not only to bring to the forefront friends that we had traditionally supporting the museum, but new friends that I had the opportunity and privilege to meet in Detroit, and I was invited to their homes and learn their interest, and for me learning their collections and learning many things like Detroit is the city in America that has been collecting African American art the longest. I thought we needed to do an exhibition about this. And today you can go to the DIA. The exhibition opens tomorrow with our gala, and it will be open to the public on Sunday. For me, elevating this history, recognizing the talent of our city, and bringing to the forefront under the umbrella of the DIA, which is one of the best museums in the world, has been a priority. Not only that, this exhibition not only looks beautiful, but all residents of Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb County will come for free to this exhibition. So accessibility, giving these educational opportunities to the kids in the schools. We work with DPSCDs very closely, and with other schools in the city. It's been a priority for the museum. You know, in a world where arts education is disappearing from schools, the DIA has become the provider of arts education for all of them. This year, including students from the Tri-County area and more, we welcome 75,000 students. Next year, we are targeting 90,000. The following year, we want to target 100,000. We want to bring this great collection accessible to all of them, because we know that education is the great equalizer of society, and the museum wants to be part of it. Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County have made the DI successful. We never knew we could be that good. We never knew we could be this kind of institution. I said, people all over the world come to see us. Today, what we want to say to all of you is that we want to continue doing this work. The only way to move forward with this success, which is your success because you made us be better, is by renewing the millage that we have. So I just want to say in these closing remarks that I would hope that this final business case from the DIA has helped you feel confident with the resolutions that are before you today. through our extensive efforts, and not just our efforts, your efforts, we've been partnering at this table 3 times a year. We come here, we listen to you, we work with you when we create these programs. With these efforts, we hope that the DIA has earned the right to go before the voters. That's what we want. We want them to decide to continue this amazing partnership, to continue providing the highest level of education to our community. So as director of the DIA, I have the privilege to be the director for 4 years. I am respectfully asking that Wayne County Art Authority place a DIA renewal millage on the ballot on March 10th of 2020. We're here to answer any questions. I know you need to discuss. You need to think about this. This is absolutely normal. But we wanted to make our case in front of you today. And we are here for that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments right now, Tim, from the art?
Well, I think they got the
You got
Wi-Fi.
You got the Wi-Fi up?
You can try it.
Huh?
I'm gonna try it.
Turn around to the board. To you.
No,
Well, at least we have the
here
connection.
also.
Oh, you see it all?
It's okay. We'll email
Yeah.
all you the videos this afternoon where you can click on the link.
Are we opening the floor for questions?
Renata, I'm sorry.
Is the floor open for questions?
Yes, yes. We thank you. Has your report been completed? Yes, Renata.
So I actually have, this is Renata Seals, and I actually have a couple of questions concerning the millage itself. One of my concerns is how it was brought to us to come on the March ballot. It just came out of nowhere, and I was wondering if you guys could talk briefly about when you decided that and, you know, just how that just came out of nowhere to us. And we do meet 3 times a year, and it wasn't really discussed in any of those meetings. So just when did you guys come up with this, and how did that come about?
Hubert, can you hear that?
That's right.
Okay.
Obviously, we've been exploring the different options that are before us, and, you know, we always wanted to look at the 2020, go 2 years early, and follow the precedent of the zoo. And as we were evaluating our options in March versus August, we felt that March was a more opportune time to go before the voters of the 3 counties. Obviously, there's 3 different elections, and the sooner that we can secure the future and the services that we offer are the better. And the board of directors, obviously, of the museum, and Gene can speak to that, have been discussing this for months now, and you know, they have to be the ultimate decision maker. And on Monday, they took a vote to ask management to move forward for the March ballot.
Would you repeat that? The board, DIA board?
Correct.
Part of that is we have a almost 50-person board of directors. And you know how bringing a group of this size together is challenging.
Sure.
Getting our board together is more than that. And the thing that I heard regularly was, don't do this in secret. We have an executive committee we meet with, 15 people. So we've tried to be inclusive and bring the board, the entire board, in on this discussion. So we met last May. We met again in August. And one of the considerations, and your point's a very good one, because the last thing we want the leaders in the counties to do is read about this somewhere or hear about it secondhand. So we started out meeting with the county executives. We met with the mayor, Mayor Duggan. We met with the various commissioners in the 3 counties. We're now meeting with the art authorities. It was a deliberative process, not in any way to pressure the art authority and make a quick decision, but we wanted to be respectful of all of the leadership, this leadership, and it isn't perfect, Renata, we will say that, but the unanimity of support that we've received each time we've met with one of those groups, one of those leaders, is very gratifying to us.
Okay, well, I actually have quite a few questions, but I'll go easy, not with my questions. I am going to ask every single one of them, but just how I respond. So we all understand what the DIA does, the ones, especially the people who meet here every couple of months. We know about the efforts. We understand that. We appreciate it. There are personal things like what you do on Livernois, El Salvador, and there are personal things that we have, personal requests that we have made that have been met, and we all understand that. It's just the timing of it is something that is of concern to me personally and what I know about what's going on with the county. So any questions that I have, they're not against what the DIA is doing.
I understand
It's
that.
about the timing of it. So in saying that, we understand that you guys want the opportunity to present this just in case it does not pass or does not get on the ballot. You want more opportunities to make sure that it does get on the ballot. And if I could stand and say, I think it's important for the people to vote on it, I do agree with that. It's just the timing. And maybe it's of no concern to you guys, but we have issues like transit that may be on the 2020 ballot. And when you start talking about the art the art boards asking for money, and then in March saying, yes, put it on the ballot, and we're going to, things like transit might be on the March ballot, it might be on the August ballot. These are things that we have to explain to taxpayers. We need money for this, we need money for this, and we need money for this. And by you guys going 2 years early with transit possibly being on the ballot for next year, it almost makes me cringe because now we're going to ask the voters for money for art or for transit. And it could be a toss-up. And it makes the decision where they might want to do transit, they might not. They might want to do arts, they might not. But in the end, it's going to cost all of them, all of the taxpayers, all of us, more money. And that's why I'm so concerned with the timing of it being 2 years early. And that's where I am on my first question. So I'll bow down for a second and let someone else ask another question.
We've had that question from others, so
Okay.
it's legitimate,
Okay.
very legitimate.
And one of the reasons we didn't choose a November election is because by state law, an RTA has to be on the November governor's or presidential election.
Yeah, I was just wondering why now, as opposed to next year, or in 2021, which would still give us a year.
In 2021, the DIA would have, since there's no election and it would be the biggest item on the ballot, we'd have to pay for that special election in each of the 3 counties, which could cost upwards of $500,000.
I think
That would not be the case in 2022, but in 2021, that would be the case.
satisfied with
Yes.
I think there's been some concerns about the Wayne County Board going first with this decision. Have you have it? What are your feedback? You're from Warren. You sort of know how they feel out in Warren. The board. Is there any concern? I think the concern maybe of some here would be that maybe if we stepped out and we agreed and then it didn't look like it was financially fiscal, our fiscal responsibility. Have you got any feel about the other 2 boards on how they, is that a reasonable question to ask?
Yes, very reasonable. And your point's a good one, but this is all about leadership, what we're talking about here. And our museum is 2 miles from here.
Right, okay.
We're in Wayne County. We would respectfully request and respect
I got
that
it.
we could say in Oakland and Macomb, Wayne County is leading this. They're going to ask that question.
That's why you're the chairman. You think like that. I wasn't thinking that way.
Well, and if that's not logical thinking, I'm happy to hear why not.
No, I
But-
think it's wonderful. I didn't.
But just to go further, we have had very good signals from the Macomb and Oakland Boards of Commissioners. They're going to be speaking in behalf of this effort. If you remember 7 or 8 years ago, I had to introduce myself to some of these people. Today, they're calling us and saying, we're going to endorse this. When can we speak on behalf of that? That starts with Mayor Duggan, and it's going to go right down the line. But I would be very comfortable sitting where you are today if you could say at the end of this meeting, not only are we supporting this, we're going to be the first art authority to put it on the ballot. That would give us great momentum.
Yes, Commissioner Colleen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a couple of comments. I know there's going to be some other issues that come up. On the issue of the commission, well, I'll just say, you get a couple articles in the newspaper and folks start getting a little nervous. What Oakland County did was the Oakland County Board out there changed the rules and said it's not just the Arts Authority, and because I solicited the letter from our attorney to say, hey, I'm not taking the DIA's word for it, can we put this on the ballot, is that legal? And that is indeed the case. Out in Oakland County, Chair Woodward went to the commission to say we need 2 sign-offs here to the Art Authority board out there as well as the Board of Commissioners. The chair of the Wayne County Board is a member of the Zoo Authority Board, and so she is well aware of how these things work, and there has not been any comment from the chair here that we want to do something similar to the Oakland Board. Also on the question of ballots, it is getting more and more common in Michigan and around the country for ballot issues, for initiatives. We didn't see this many 15, 20, whatever years ago. Now everybody's like California, got bedsheet ballots. I don't think it's predictable. There is, what's going to be on what ballot, because, that proposal is floating around to have a nonprofit doing after-school education for students in Wayne County to provide more support, for our stressed out school budgets. That may also be on the March ballot. Folks are looking at that, right? We may or may not have a transit. So I don't think we can sit here and say, well, because maybe everybody winds up on the August ballot, or, so I don't think that's predictable in terms of how many other things are going to be on the ballot at the same time. So I just don't think we can see into the future, and and then it goes both ways, right? Sometimes if you're the only thing on the ballot, that's an easy target. So it kind of goes both ways with that. But I don't think we can predict right now. There could be 3 or 4 things on the ballot in March, but there might only be 1 or 2 as well, and so that's not predictable.
I have a quick. From your information sheet, one of the concerns that I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. From your information sheet, one of the concerns that residents have posed to the DIA is not being aware of the benefits of the DIA. And I think that's something that we always bring up as well here with the board, is how are you all getting this information out to the communities? Because I'm on the board, I typically hear about them, but I cannot say that I see them out in the community. So how effective is a March ballot initiative going to be for you when you yourselves say residents don't know the benefits of the DIA? Do you find that, have you done some polling, will it go in your favor? If it fails, are you then allowed to bring it back in 2022? 2-part question, I guess. So.
To answer the first part of your question, I think, we do have an awareness gap with some of the benefits we have. And, we've done extensive community research and polling amongst residents to figure out how we need to communicate with them, what mediums they want to be reached at, what is relevant programming. And, that takes time. I mean, we've made progress, but there's still a lot to do. We're in the midst of just starting a awareness and favorability campaign that, doesn't have to do with the millage. It's going to be something before the millage and after the millage, because we know we have to let people know about the free admission, the school programs, seniors out in the community. And we need to be on TV. We need to invest more in that. We need to be on radio. We need to be in local magazines and be targeted to families and people who have an interest, potential interest in coming. We just did a focus group of people who have not been to the museum in 12 or 18 months, but have been before. I mean, that's our next set of audiences to say, you've been here, but why aren't you coming back on a regular basis? And so we're trying to be smarter and more targeted, and it takes money to do that. And so as an organization, we're committed to improving year by year on that. And I kind of, from my past job as somebody at the county, people always say, what do counties do? Counties provide some of the greatest public resources you have for economic development, for health and human services, for education through Michigan State Extension, roads, sewers, court systems. But people don't necessarily know that. I think it's kind of, I always parallel those two. And, we just have to keep communicating with the public. And we have to be smart about it, and we have to be targeted, and we have to be persistent about that. And to your second question, which was, again?
Has there been some polling as to which way you feel the community will vote on it in March? And if it does not pass in March, you're able to bring it back in 2022, correct?
We've done polling and community research that shows that our favorability in Wayne County is extremely high, and that people are willing to vote for a renewal in Wayne County.
Let me just add, our greatest marketers are the 75,000 students that our director just mentioned who come to the museum every year. We hope those young people go back home and tell their parents what the experience was like. But if you have any ideas that we could, improve what we're doing, we're asking every time, because building awareness is critical. If we have such a great resource here in our city and people aren't aware of it, then we need to improve what we do to make sure they become aware of it. And the other thing is, once we get them inside the DIA, it's happened.
One of the things that we've been doing is to really mix up the programs and really create opportunities for people of any community and background to come to the DIA. And this has been a great thing for us to let others know that the museum has something for everyone, or we at least try to really cover as many interests as possible. Yesterday, when I was at the opening of the exhibition for our members, someone came to me and said, I'm so proud that the DIA is doing the chess club event every Friday evening, and the museum is transformed by these kids who come to the DIA. Others come to me and say, it was amazing that you did the Star Wars exhibition. I've never been to the DIA before, and now I'm coming. So we are really trying to create opportunities, and it takes time, not only to raise awareness, but also to change how this museum traditionally has operated. My point today was that we are making this change thanks to you. From the support that you're giving us, you are making us a really different place. You are making the DIA a tool for the community. We are an extraordinary example for the country. We would like to continue doing this. I think it's amazing. And as a director, I'm just incredibly honored to have this opportunity to be a community-engaged museum. There's no other in the country.
I would like to make a comment, if I may.
Bring people, please have mic awareness, so bring the mic down so you're, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Kling. I want to make a comment about, it's not only that people in the community are aware of the DIA in Detroit, the DIA is making communities more aware of art among themselves. Our council in our community has never been as strong as it is now. And Maria and I exchange ideas all the time about our two adjacent communities. So the DIA is sparking initiative and sparking creativity within the communities themselves. And it springs from the enthusiasm about the DIA. And so we're very grateful for that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 8 years? The topic of community outreach has been a very lively topic at these meetings for those 8 years. And this board has helped to make connections into the community. I know there's a discussion going on now with the Inner City Youth Group over on the east side, not in my district. Well, I think the whole east side is my district. But there's a young lady over there who has, 40, 50 kind of middle-aged school kids, and they're doing all sorts of stuff and going everywhere, and all sorts of programming for them in the summer, and now they're expanding into the school year. They've got a grant now from CRESI, Kenda McKinney Anderson, if anybody knows her, and then she hires kids when they go into high school to be a part of. So I do think we have a role for the awareness too, but I do appreciate the outreach efforts and how difficult this is because, for instance, what is the awareness of the property tax exemption for residents of the city of Detroit? That's broadcast everywhere. That's talked about a lot, and still a very large percentage of our residents have no idea that they can or know how to access if you're in poverty, to get that property tax exemption. People looking for help with utility bills. Where do I go? What do I do? And of course, in social services, and that's what I'm involved in at many different levels with the Mental Health Authority, but Sharon Health and Human Services here, we know that the people that need services the most are the hardest to reach. So trying to get this so I think we have a role. I think the DIA's been doing an outreach effort. It will never be probably where we want it to be, just like with the property tax exemption and a lot of things with awareness out there for citizens. But on the other hand, I don't think that there's, from this board or from the DIA, there's been forget the community outreach kind of stuff. I don't think that is nowhere near what's been going on. So I think that's always going to be an issue in so many things that we do, and not just this. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you, Madam
I'd just
Chair.
like to build upon that very quickly because I like to use recent examples of community outreach and how the museum can partner with other organizations in Wayne County to really make sure the residents of Wayne know about the work that the DI is doing for them and the benefits. When I became a director 4 years ago, someone knocked in my office and said, why don't you do an exhibition in Wayne County Community College District? I have to admit at the time, I didn't know there was a college here in Wayne County. 3 days ago, we were celebrating a fantastic partnership with the college, with Wayne County Community College District. And, the room was full. Everybody's so excited. This is opportunities for the museum to work with the teachers, we work with the students, to the temporary exhibitions. And by doing that, we have a partner that is going to raise awareness of what the museum is doing. So we invest funding in marketing. We invest funding in PR. I'm a nonis because I love it. But we also work with partners in the community to really help us, the residents, know what they have there in this amazing museum. So I just want to make that point.
Thank you. Lolita?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I appreciate all of the momentum that I've seen in our community, and I prefer the and we're doing this, and we're doing that, and always a question of how we can do better in our communities, no matter what we throw back at you, but I was also a little dismayed with, I take this personally, and I really try to do my homework about what's going on and what I receive, about what I should be paying attention to. And when I was apprised of what it was, I'm like, okay, did I miss that? Okay, maybe I didn't miss it. Let me see what's going on. And the things that stuck at me were, as a resident, reduction of services for the youth, reduction of services for the seniors. I know a little bit about politics, how some things are written and the end result, but the community may not see all of the other part, but part of what they do see are things that, are you tugging at my heart or are you tugging at my pocketbook? And if I'm taking this serious, how do I explain the advantages and the value of all the good things that we are doing with the actual facts? And we talked briefly about the other counties. We all have one thing in common, the DIA, but we also have different challenges, different things going on the ballot, what's most important, and this whole socioeconomic. But another thing is, I like to know who's really at the table, whether they sign anything or not. There's two other people, even though we're not in the same house. You playing? You playing? You playing? Even if I'm the one that actually holds the pen, I would like to know, because this helps for future relationships. It helps for future monies that you say we've got to raise or you have to raise. Those things help, and they help politically. And so I haven't heard that. And I guess in your position as a commissioner, you might know a little bit about that, but I don't know that much about it. And it's not like to hold back a decision. It's about shaping, do I have the information? Because after I say yes, or encourage the other members of this board to say yes, how do I repeat it? What do I say? Because the only thing is I'm hearing right now that if I don't do it, is it going to be seniors or kids? That's tugging at your heart. There's nothing in there that said about anybody at the DIA who's getting ready to lose their job or a reduction in salaries. And those are the things right now that people are talking about with economics, because as you mentioned, you took the time out to go on Livernois, so you were very apprised of how people or what people are doing in terms of practicing their craft or feeding their families. And if it wasn't for this lady to give up the seats where customers couldn't come in to promote in the community, and as you know, we have 4 galleries over there. They don't have the space, the money, or the time to even help promote something here. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything on Livernois about, they do have a meeting space, but actually the benefit of it, I only see that they can lend their name to, say, in the DIA, which is a big deal. It's really a big deal, and I don't want to minimize that. But nobody has said, Macomb said they can't wait. Oakland said they can't wait. I've only heard about let's continue the momentum and be the first in line. First in line is good, but we all crossing it together because they all have to pay. So maybe, that's where my head is right now. And whoever wrote the copy, I think it would look better if we'd have said Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne, they can't wait to get it up front and to get it on the ballot and vote to continue this early. Instead, it's like, oh my goodness, the kids may not be able to come, or the seniors may not be able to come downtown. That's what I read. Did anybody else? Am I incorrect?
Thank you for your remarks, Renata.
Thank you.
You calling on me?
No, Renata's asking a question.
Yeah.
Thank
Are
you.
you finished, Lloyd?
Yes,
I thought
thank
you
you.
were finished. I'm sorry.
Just to piggyback a little bit, my question was a couple of years ago when the millage, came about, you guys said that you were not going to re-ask for another millage, and we know that to not be true at this time. And this is a 2-part question, could you guys briefly talk about why you are back on the ballot for the millage, even though you said that you weren't?
It is true that, or possibly true that I was not part of the management team when that was set in 2012.
So you're saying that you're unaware that it was said?
I'm hearing that was said.
Okay.
I was not part of that decision. I was working as curator of European art at the DIA.
Okay.
I think the management team at the time didn't have the information that we have today. And they didn't know that the museum was going to be transformed by this millage and by the arts agreement and the work with the Arts Authority. Therefore, we are providing a level and quality of service that we never imagined we could, and that's because the museum has been transformed internally. This millage has had not an impact that is restricted to the financial operation of the museum. It has had a much broader impact, for which I'm even more grateful, which is the fact that we have changed the culture of the organization. So we would like to renew this millage to continue doing what we are doing, because it is extraordinary. It's unique. We never thought this could be. It's a model for the country. And therefore, we feel that the voters need to know this, and the work that has been done, and how these museums become a tool for everyone.
Some have said I've been there too long, Renata, but
I disagree.
I was there at the time that you're referring to. And what we said, what I said, others may have said it differently, we wanted the 10-year term at that time so we could raise our own financial endowment, our fund, that we could be independent going forward. We started right after August of 2012 doing that. Since our director arrived 4 years ago, we've had a tremendous increase in people wanting to support the museum. It was good then, but what happened in the bankruptcy, if you recall, we at the museum were asked by the emergency manager and the governor if the foundation community and the state of Michigan came in to help avoid selling the art by raising a fund that would go to the police and fire retirees. The DIA had to have skin in the game, they called it. They asked us for $100 million, which we raised in 10 months from all of our donors around the world. We were happy to do that because the grand bargain resulted in the museum becoming independent. Not that we're not part of the city of Detroit, we're a vibrant part of the city, but we're independent in terms we own the art, the buildings, all of the land now. So what we said at the time was, give us 10 years, we'll raise enough money, we hope, not to have to come back and ask for a renewal. We're well on our way to doing that, but we need additional time, given what we've done for the grand bargain, to continue that fundraising as part of what the director just said in terms of these services.
Okay, so for the second part of...
If I could just answer that
Okay.
too. The legislation does allow for 20 years, and the DIA did come to the counties, because I was there in 2012, and asked for 20 years. And I'm not sure what happened in Wayne, but I know in Oakland and Macomb we said, that's crazy to give a millage that doesn't exist 20 years. We'll give you 10, and if you want to earn the right to come back after that, we'll discuss that. And 10 years is a long time, and, economics change, people change, and what I would say, I think, and the DIA would say, is that, leave it up to the county leadership, the DIA and the voters to decide if they want to continue this partnership at the time.
Okay, so the second part of my question is, it pertains to how things went after the millage itself, and this is no secret. Everybody knows it's the pink elephant in the room after the millage was passed. All of these high raises for all of the hierarchy of the DIA, astronomical raises, and it made people question okay, we went through all of this trouble and we're paying tax dollars, and the first thing that they did was give, astronomical raises. And just as you said, you were on the Macomb Commissioner, correct? And in saying that, what have you guys put in place to make sure, or to at least make us feel like that's not going to happen again? You're at the table 2 years early saying, okay, we want to redo the millage, renew the millage, but is there anything in place? Because just as Lolita said, I was piggybacking, you're talking about the programs that are going to be cut, but we hear no discussion about all of these high raises that went into place. How does that come down to meet some of the economic needs of the people and things like that? I'm not asking who's going to be cut from the team, so to speak, if it doesn't pass, but are these things considerations instead of cutting programs, seeing that they went in place after the millage was approved the first time?
I'll be first in line. No, I'm just kidding.
More than likely.
I'm sorry to bring that up, then, I'm sorry.
I think that
Let me just mention, that happened on my watch. These two gentlemen were not at the museum at the time.
We remember.
Yes, I remember very well. I had to come here and as I said to many, I should have worn one of the suits of armor that were in the Great Hall at that time when I came to these meetings. But we learned from that. That was very poor judgment at the time. What happened, though, those raises were paid back to the DIA. There was no taxpayer money that was involved in that. Putting that aside, it wasn't the right thing to do. So what we did do is we came to the authorities and we had an amendment to the Art Services Agreement. So we share this kind of information with the authority before there are any adjustments to anyone's compensation at the museum. Again, transparent, open. What we try and do is show comparability with other similarly situated professionals around the country. If we have this wonderful museum, we need outstanding professionals to run the museum. We have to compensate them. But we have to be mindful that we're receiving money from taxpayers at the same time, many of whom aren't getting raises. So the point's well made. We've put precautions and arrangements in place, we think. We've had no incidents since then similar to that, and we won't going forward as long as I'm involved.
Okay, just so that it could be noted, that was the question that I asked, because I remember sitting here, and when it was time, we knew that the raises were going to happen, whether the art board approved it or not, because of the fund that it was coming from. So we knew that at the time, and I voted no, and I felt bad because I do think that the people of the DIA do work hard. They work hard, trying to please people, but it just comes down to checks and balances. So part of my restraint that I'm having for voting a yay on this are situations like that. When I vote yes and say, yeah, I think that maybe this should hit the ballot, what happens when it hits the ballot, people vote for it, and then the next thing you know, the money from wherever it is coming from is spent on things that they are not fair, and they have nothing to do with programming or anything like that. So that is one of my major concerns this morning. I've been up pacing the floor since 6 o'clock about a meeting like this, and I remember sitting at the table with Tim and Barb and Maria and Betty, and I remember voting no, and I felt bad, but at the same time, I felt good knowing that I was doing the right thing, and I just don't want to, in 2 years from now, regret if I say yes and then it goes to the ballot and people are not aware. They think they're just voting for programs for kids and seniors, and then it turns into astronomical raises for people doing jobs that they're already currently doing for $40,000 less.
Yep. And that's a great point. And there are no they were not raises, they were bonuses that are not.
That sounds even worse.
Nobody receives a bonus at the DIA. They've changed the protocols. And I think since we did drag Rob out here this morning, he can talk a little bit how we base compensation at the museum.
I'm glad that he came.
Yes.
Well, good morning. My name is Rob Bowen. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the DIA. We have a compensation system that has a structure, has ranges, has grades similar to what other organizations would have. All that has been benchmarked. We've implemented that system during this time period, brought consultants in to help us structure that because we didn't have that previously. I think the compensation that is being discussed here is really for the executive leadership, more so than the average museum employee. And that is covered, as Jean had mentioned, under the Second Amendment to the Arts Services Agreement. And that agreement says that for the top 3 employees of the organization, that any increases in compensation will be reviewed with the arts authorities. And, Salvador is the only person under contract. The rest of us are at will. So Salvador, when he became director, signed a 5-year contract. That contract was reviewed with the arts authorities in each of the 3 counties, and so at that time, I think you were aware of what that contract included. I can say for myself, at that same time, my compensation was reviewed, and I have not had an increase in 3 years, because that was the last time that my compensation was reviewed with the arts authorities. We do benchmark against other museums and other organizations, and we want to compensate people fairly. And, we think that we do that. We're trying to make sure that there is a level of transparency with the arts authorities on these higher level positions, on these larger compensation packages. Again, we publish that in a 990 every year for the top paid employees in the organization. It's there, it's public. We post that on our website so that people can see what that is. And so we feel that we've tried to address that the best we can.
And Rob, we benchmark with what organizations?
Well, we benchmark. We have a lot of different benchmarks. Certainly, we look. It all depends on the position, and whether we think it's a. So for example, for a museum director, that's sort of a national or international search. For somebody like me, that's a finance person. That's a local search. So we look at local market for that. We look at. So we kind of go through the organization position by position and say, what is the market that we're trying to recruit from? Therefore, what do we have to do comparisons against? We have, like any organization that does compensation studies, we have a whole range of benchmark data that we use, and then we try to figure out the appropriate ones.
And we all understand that. It's just like real estate. You have to do comparables and things like that. We all get that. My concern is still, just like you stated, that you have not had a raise in 3 years. So in 2022, we know that's 5 years. So the expectation is for you, I'm sure, if I worked at a job for 5 years, I would expect a raise. So again, we'll be right back where we were. Are we going to have some astronomical raises because people have not received them in 5 years? So to the general public, it's going to look like we went right back to what we did before. We renewed the millage, and now it's time for the CFO to get a raise. He's going to get an astronomical. Are we going to be right back where we were before? Because now it's been 5 years, and he might deserve a raise, but to the general public, his wage or his salary is a raise. So how does that work when you are talking to the public in 2022 and it is time for your CFO to get a raise after the millage is approved?
Well, as we've mentioned, we have a process in place where that doesn't happen unilaterally. We would come before the Art Authority and discuss those situations here. So that wouldn't be something we do on our own. We would be able to share the information, the comparables, the data, and reach some accord.
Okay.
That's the way the Second Amendment reads now. So that's a.
I mean, I understand how it works. We'll be right back there and what it's going to look like to the general public who are not aware of what the Second Amendment says, but they do know numbers when they see them.
My sense is if we do this collectively, I think it'll have a much different impact than if we did it as we did in 2014 without your concurrence. But we understand your point very well.
Okay.
And if you have suggestions of how can we do this?
I'm not a finance person. I'm just a community relations person.
I got a way.
Maybe you have, or anybody in this Arts Authority has an idea how to do this. We want to work with you. We want to do it unilaterally. We don't want that situation to happen again. And as long as I am the director of this museum, I can guarantee you that it will not happen. It shall not happen.
But just so that you understand, once again, the concern is we know that it might be time after 5 years for a raise, but at the same time, the conversation is, but understand that if we might have to cut these kids programs, we might have to cut these senior programs, and this is what the general public is hearing. So we might cut these programs if it doesn't happen, but at the same time, we're going to give him 5 years worth of raises. So
well, that will never happen under my directorship. We're not going to cut programs to give anybody a raise. I can guarantee you that.
Okay.
You have my word here.
Okay.
Excuse me,
Please
Tim.
know that in the minutes.
Tim, you had some comments to make?
Yeah, a couple. Mr. Bowen, you haven't had a raise in 3 years. You should get yourself elected to the Wayne County Commission so you can vote yourself a 10% pay cut. That's the excitement in public life. I'm glad you mentioned the 2014 date when that, closely on the heels of the millage being approved. And that's when the raise came, like a year and a half after that, right? I'm going to chalk that up to a certain extent to the previous discussion we had, that the transition from being, and I don't mean to insult anybody here, but a kind of an insular organization. And now all of a sudden, you got public money in there, you got public responsibilities, and so I think it's a culture change. So that early on, I think if that had gone on for 5 or 6 years and all the feedback that we've been giving and working with the boards, that probably would not have happened. But I also want to say we have a tool as a board. We did approve the Second Amendment. And actually, it was you guys that brought it to us. It wasn't us that proposed it. But I think with us, so there is a protection there. But we have a tool, and that is the agreement that we have with the DIA, which is always open to amendment. And so I think in looking at that agreement, and maybe, if we get a millage renewal here, Ms. Haley, I think you raised kind of another category, right? It was in those agreements that we said seniors, that we said education for teachers, to get more in there, to get students down here. That's prescribed in there. Now, if there's other areas, because when I hear you talking about the 4 groups out there that need some kind of support, right? Maybe it's, who knows what it is, rent or whatever, to increase that. Maybe this is a discussion we should be entering when we look at that service agreement to say, are there kind of other categories? And of course, that would have to be negotiated out, but to see. So that is what we have as a board, is that service agreement. And that, I think, to a large extent, is how we speak to the DIA in this relationship. And would somebody remind me of the 2 people on this board that are a member of the DIA board?
That would be me.
I can't remember.
And
Nancy.
Hubert.
I'm sorry. Oh, Hubert. Okay.
Hubert, you're there?
Yeah.
Hubert's there. I hear his windshield
So that's
wipers.
always been our conduit. The reason that's in there is for this Arts Authority Board to have a conduit back right to the full board of the DIA. And maybe we should be looking as an Arts Authority, if there's things we want to say to the full DIA board, that we pass resolutions, that we give to our representatives on the board, saying we want to have that discussion at the full DIA board. So we cannot, we have a public position on this board, and we can't I mean, you can, but we shouldn't neglect that and just go, okay, 3 meetings a year and not think about things until, 4 days before a meeting. That we could, and when we're talking about outreach, right, I think it could be very valuable if we had a little subgroup of this board. Now, I believe you're contacting all the schools, right, to let them know the availability of that. I believe you're contacting senior groups, right, and reaching out that way in our area. So those contacts are being made. It occurs to me as I sit here, City of Detroit has like a list of block clubs. And I don't know if you guys have that list, but that would be another ways to go to the block clubs that have registered with the City of Detroit, get that list and reach out through there. So I think if we had a little subgroup here that talked with the DIA about community outreach, what are all the kinds of things we can do? Where are we missing? What else can we do? So I think on a going forward basis that we continue that and assert our desires, but within the context of some sort of systemic communication through the 2 board members that we have there, through a little work among members of this group to have that communication. I don't know if I want to raise it now. I got a question for Mr. Bowman, but
Excuse me, Lolita has.
I just have one question, and once again, I admire everything you're doing about the community outreach. I realize it's a mindset too. It's like anything else as things change. It's just because you can vote, everybody doesn't vote. It's the same thing just because you say you can come to the DIA, it's not as many people going. So that's a narrative and a thing that we have to do. I know that's evolving, and we're all responsible. It's as much our responsibility as it is yours. You just can't say I did it and write it on the paper, and that's the end of it. We have to go back into our communities. I get that. But I didn't get a response as to what was the support or the pushback from Macomb or Oakland about this going on the ballot right now. I'm sure it's some conversation. I don't have any conversation that I talk to from people that are in Macomb or Oakland about this. Even though people don't have a vote, usually the leaders have an opinion. And I'm just curious, you've got to have relationships with them, so is there anything that you can share with us about what they're thinking about this request that
We've been out to the Oakland Commission twice already in the past 2 weeks, and they passed the resolution that the board recommend to the Art Authority that this be placed on the ballot. They look to vote on that on November 20th, and they're looking to schedule their Art Authority meeting on November 21st. Macomb Art Authority, we've had some meetings with some members, and they're trying to get their schedule together. They're looking at right before Thanksgiving for a meeting or right after Thanksgiving.
So you don't know whether that's a yes or not in terms of...
Well, they haven't voted on it publicly.
You said that was Oakland County, right?
Oakland County was the first one, and then Macomb County's working to schedule their special meeting.
And Oakland hasn't voted either. Neither one has voted yet, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. They have their meeting scheduled on the 20th and 21st in Oakland.
And with Macomb, how hopeful are you guys with that, with the jail millage going on at the same time?
The jail millage will be on the August ballot, not the March ballot. So
I understand that, but it still costs.
Totally.
It still costs the taxpayer, so they wouldn't look at it like whether it was March or August, but more so.
Yep, we can't.
You or them.
We can't predict what the voters will do, but we have confidence that, this will be placed on the ballot in the other 2 counties.
Okay.
Thank you.
Obviously, they have to ultimately make that decision like this body does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there any other comments? I have a. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Is this one?
It's your little green light.
Yeah. The green.
There you go.
There it is. I'm new to the board, but I just want to make sure I understand what's going on today. So this resolution initially should have been on the ballot for 2022, and we're voting on it today. And that's because of services that will be cut if we don't vote on this today?
No. May I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
The voters approved a 10-year millage.
okay.
Okay? That does expire in 2022. Now, everyone that does these millages, right, Wayne County has to renew its parks millage coming up. It will expire. And everyone that has millages out there, and Mr. Kalogerakis, our attorney, is also very familiar with this, there's always that estimation, do we wait right to the end to go back to the voters for renewal? And if it gets turned down, now we are out of luck. And so people do look at, let's go to the voters a little in advance, right? And that's true of all millages. That proposal that people are looking at for a nonprofit to provide educational opportunities for Wayne State, or for County of Wayne students after school, during school, they're making their assessments too of like what ballot do we go to. And so what the DIA has requested of this body is to say, yeah, the millage is not up for a couple of years. We'll continue to collect that millage right up to 22. But let's go to the voters year and a half early here or something like that. And so if something happens, as it does, and I have talked to the chair of the Oakland County Commission. There's not going to be a problem. I don't think that they're going to put it on the ballot. And it may be true in Macomb as well. I haven't talked to folks up there. But then there's, what are the voters going to do? Macomb's going to be a challenge. There's a huge anti-tax crowd out there. And so that's one of the things here, too. What if the voters approve it in 2 of the counties and not a third? And how does that change the dynamics of this? So, no, there's no, we're going to have to cut programs if we don't vote to put it on the ballot at this meeting today for March. But that does loom in the future, like what does happen, and that's a question I know there's other discussion, but I'm going to go back to Mr. Bowen, and just so you have a preview, we'll get there. What does it look like, the finances of the DIA with millages, without millages, and have some sense if you can think about that. But the direct answer to your question is no, we're not in danger of okay, then we got to cut tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, I have a comment. I have great respect for Gene Gagaro. He's the one that really saved the museum. Without him, we wouldn't even be here discussing this. And he had to go against all forces that didn't even know what they were talking about. And somehow, his passion and his dedication to what he was looking for to have change the museum, I think that we owe a great deal of gratitude for that. We've had the opportunity through your efforts. If it had not been for you in the grand bargain, we wouldn't be sitting here. And I think you're a great leader, and I guess it's coming down to trust. Do we trust you? Do you trust us? And we have to, and we all want to be together. We don't want to be part of us in doubt, part of us, some of us want it. We want to come, when we come, we want to come with full force that we all want it. I personally want it, so I just want to make sure that we all are in agreement and no one has any not distrust, but
Reservations.
what?
Reservations.
Reservations. I use the word trust. She uses reservation. She's a lawyer. But anyway, that was my comment. And I think as far as you're reaching the public, I've already talked to a lot of union leaders that will endorse this if it passed. I've got them already on, and I've also Romulus, and I've talked to someone out in Romulus in the council, and I've talked to Rotary members. They all want to hear from the DIA, so you have to, and David, you're already working on that, going to the Rotaries and I know that because we had conversation. And the comment on the comment on the art at the North Terminal, to me, I think says it all, because when people from all over the world can come through the North Terminal and be in awe of what Detroit is and what Detroit they think, what they see from Detroit, they did not know that other than we were a blue collar town with shopping at Walmarts or whatever. I don't know what you'd say, but that's what I think a lot of people, I know my relatives in Alabama. Oh, we don't want to go to Detroit, blah, 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 blah. But I can tell you that what you've done there is changed and uplifted Detroit beyond anything that could ever get national attention. And to get a national leader, you got to have national dollars. That's all. So, Tim, you had something?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to my question for
Okay.
Mr. Bowen then,
Sorry.
if you could, now you've had a few minutes to, I don't know if you came prepared for that, but can you draw a little bit of a picture, because, in the paperwork here, it's about 27 million between the three counties. We're about 9 of that, so it must be about 23 million.
Well,
I believe
this
it.
year,
See it on the chart in front of you.
year
I saw
to
that.
date, we're 25.1
25,
million.
yeah.
And that's
So if
kinda
you
where
could
we're-
draw a picture of the finances of the DIA without that support, and I'm also going to say to you, because I've just been doing politics for too long and I know Macomb County, what it might look like if the public support then winds up being more like 18 million after we go through this cycle. So give us a little picture of that. What's going to happen with the DIA if it's not renewed, if it's renewed but only 2 or the 3 counties? How does that impinge your, just on finances, not on policy, just on finances?
Yeah. So, clearly, that's one of the reasons that we would like to go for a millage in 2020, so that we have a little bit of certainty as to what our future looks like, so that we can do appropriate planning for beyond this first term of the millage. When we look at it internally and we say, obviously we've grown, we've added a lot of services. When we look at our projections to where we would be at the end of 2022 and say, without a millage, what resources would we have? We would have to adjust the museum. Now, what we would have to do is we'd have to develop a new strategic plan that identifies our priorities at that point in time as a smaller museum. We have not done that work because we don't think that it's the best use of our time at this point in time until we know that it's not going to happen, because all it does is get everybody stirred up. But the starting point would really be, what would a new strategic plan be without those resources? Now, I can tell you, with the resources that we project to have, we'd have a significant gap versus the services that we're providing today. And so that we would have to adjust the museum. We wouldn't be able to just carry on the way that we are. And if it's one county that is not part of the deal, then that's maybe a different adjustment than if the millage expires at the end of if our millage funding expires at the end of 2022, which the way we use the millage funds, they're levied on the December taxes, and so we use it for the calendar year following to provide the services of the museum. So while the last approved tax levy will be December of 2021, we will use that money to fund all these services through December of 2022. And so we're still a few years out from that. The big picture is we know that there's a gap, and we have a range of what that gap is, and it's significant, but we haven't started to say, okay, then what do we do? It would really kick off a strategic planning process. And frankly, approving a renewal of the millage would kick off a new strategic planning process, because we would then say, okay, what do we want to do over the next 5-10 years? How do we make this museum better, and how do we serve the communities better? So we look at this as the opportunity for us to be able to focus how we have to plan for the future. Are we going to plan with the partnerships with the counties and continue to expand on the work that we're doing, or are we going to have to hunker down some, cut back, work on a smaller resource base?
Thank you.
Could I make one point in answer to the good question you raised? And thank you, Madam Chairman, for those comments about trust, because that's exactly what we're here for today. One of these art authorities is going to have to lead, whether it's Wayne, Macomb, or Oakland. We're having very positive discussions with the other art authorities and the commissions. I'm confident, but I can't predict, because there'll be people sitting just like there are here that will want to have their voices heard and their questions answered. My sense is, though, that if this authority takes the lead, it would give us tremendous, as I say, momentum, support to be able to go to Oakland and Macomb and say this is part of the process. We've had this discussion here, and we're happy to answer all and any of your questions, but we do have a compelling case that's driving our request today, and happy to continue to talk about it to the extent we have to.
I think the important, from my perspective, the message is that the gap is there because when the museum grew, the services grew and it kept expanding, then that required more money. So that's why, and the endowment, so it's between the endowment and the expected services and the service delivered is causing the gap. Is that
Yes, I mean,
bottom line?
while the endowment has grown, and the team continues to work on growing the endowment, our services have grown. We've become a much bigger organization in the meantime, and the services that we provide and the programs that we have expanded significantly from what we were.
Could I ask you this? Has Wayne County and Detroit been using the services more than Macomb and Oakland? I'm just curious about that. I mean, you're spending more, having to spend a lot here.
Yes. Certainly in our school groups, for example, we have larger participation from Detroit and Wayne County than we do the others. The others are more balanced, I think, in terms of the services, but schools in particular are heavy Wayne County and heavy Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last calendar year, I know we go over numbers a lot, but I think we were at about 32,000 students for Wayne County and about 22, 23 for Oakland, and I think around 14 for Macomb. So for the school program, I mean, we've kind of hit it out of the park for Wayne County, I think.
Well, I'd like to explore this a little bit further. If Wayne County and Oakland County voted for it and Macomb didn't, what would happen then?
The agreement would stand in Oakland and Wayne County, and Macomb would just not be a part of.
But would it affect
region.
Would it affect the financial picture at all? In terms of
We would lose about $5.5 to $6 million of revenue.
And it would impact the services, because if they were not,
it would impact our service.
it would not impact
Wayne County.
Wayne or Oakland. If a county decided not to participate, they would not receive the services.
But would it balance? I guess
I'm
that's
sorry,
the question.
I
The
can't
question
hear you.
is, would it balance? Although we're not getting their money and we're not providing them services, would it affect the overall programming is the question.
Yeah, and, as I said before, we'd have to develop a
whole new
strategic
plan.
plan on that, and so it would be premature to say that. I think, we very much support the programs that we're providing, and we're looking to enhance that and continue to grow that. Again, it would be hard to.
I think Commissioner Killeen has. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Well, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion at this point. We have before us Resolution 2019, I guess this would be 01. It hasn't been so designated. I don't believe we've had a resolution that the board has voted on this year, so it'd be Resolution 2019. I would move its approval. I do want to comment that, this is going county by county, but the presence of this cultural institution for Wayne County, Southeast Michigan, all of the state, indeed, and with the world too, given the, I think it is important in my mind that we have a strong art institute, a strong cultural institution in our community. As perhaps as imperfect it's been, as if we've gone through this new dance with a new dance partner and figuring this out, I think the effect of the millage currently in filling in the gaps in education in our schools, which have been severely cut back on arts, I think we make an enormous contribution to the education of our young people. I think also the senior, it's marvelous. We all know how folks kind of get stuck in some of their senior homes and don't see the light of day much. And I think for our seniors, for ongoing education, and I think that's all worthy. I will say again, we have an agreement. We have a service agreement with the DIA that is always open for amendment, that I think we can work cooperatively with the DIA going forward if we don't think as an arts authority we're really getting enough. But that's going to take, some effort, because you can't come to a meeting and say do this and then 6 months later, how come you didn't do it? We're going to have to have some skin in the game too to make some things happen. So with that, Madam Chair, I would have moved to approve Resolution 2019, and I guess I'll designate it now if my attorney doesn't mind, 2019-01. I'll move it for approval. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner, do you need the amount?
Well, yeah, we will have to put the amount in there, because I've checked and you've checked. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. When I received that information that came blank, I don't know what that number is, so I wasn't going to put something in myself. Hopefully you guys can provide the information for us so we can fill in that blank about the amounts out there.
Our equalization and assessment director has been checked with, and that number is 8.7 million is what it would anticipate. Now, if you go back and you look at the previous years at their bar graphs, it all depends on the county collections. It's not going to be exactly 8.7 each year. Maybe it changes a little bit next year, given our tax collection and housing prices and stuff. But as we sit here today, with our current numbers, 8.7 million would be what it would raise per annum.
So
Did I step all over you, Mr. Bone?
I'm familiar with the 2019 because I have the 2019 data. I think that the Equalization Department is doing a projection to what that would be for the first year of this renewal in 2022.
Right.
The 19 would be 8.5 million. So I think that probably sounds
okay. Yeah, because we can't project 22 yet.
Right. So I think he has some kind of a growth factor that he uses in long-term planning, but I do have the 19 equalization
so you're
documents from them.
8.5.
Well, I'd be comfortable if the Equalization Department is projecting 8.7 for 2022. I'd be comfortable with that. I don't know how to project property value growth.
But in your communication, what number came up?
I didn't ask for 2022. I had the 2019, and that taxable value would equate to 8.5.
And I think that's a perfectly fine number to use.
Okay.
So 8.5, my bad. So we will drop that in there. But again, Madam Chair, I move the resolution.
I second.
Who seconded?
I second.
Gloria.
Any more discussion?
Any more discussion?
No.
Barbara you have.
Well, I'm hoping that the board passes this unanimously, but it may be to get that unanimous opinion, we may need to meet one more time. I'm concerned that today's vote is a little precipitous.
Okay, so
Are you moving to set a second meeting?
It's been seconded, but then Barbara's comments, so where do we go from here? I hate to say this, but So,
Continue discussion and go to a vote, unless there's another proper motion that appears.
So Barb, are you motioning to postpone this?
I'm not making that motion, but I am identifying that problem.
I would like to make a motion to postpone this vote right now to maybe just so that we could have a discussion about the questions and answers that were formed at this table today, even if we could just postpone it for a week or so, if that's an option.
is a week a problem? I mean, in terms of date or time, I'm not sure of the timing, so.
December 17th is the draft. I guess we'd ask we need a parliamentarian at this point. We
Yes.
have a motion and a second on the floor. Where does this motion lay with that?
Well, this would be like a motion to table
Yeah.
exactly and move it off. As you point out, and as provided in some of the information, there is a deadline of December 17th that this needs to be completed. So you really have a small window. We have Thanksgiving coming up in there too. I'd like to have everybody be aware of that as we choose
Well,
to
with
move
this
it back.
Is this motion out of order?
But this motion, it was not out of order. It would be appropriate if it has a second and discussion and go vote on it.
All right, I'll second.
Okay, it's been, so the first motion, what happens to the first motion?
Just get put on
On the tape, on,
It's put on hold for a second while you vote on this other one, whether or not to delay this for another time.
Nada has made a motion that we vote on this formally in a week, with a week's
Sure.
time.
Sure.
And it was supported by Lolita.
Date uncertain.
Not Lolita, Dawn. Oh, Lolita.
No, a second by Lolita
So
Haley.
what did you say? I heard, what,
It's date uncertain.
but hopefully.
She didn't say
within-
exactly 1 week from today, but
But in terms of time.
yeah.
Well,
I can't hear you, Lolita.
understanding that the December 17th
Right.
date is set, but that's unfortunate because this was just presented to us today, so we have to just make sure that it happens within the week or so. But I understand the deadline, and we're not trying to extend past the deadline, but at the same time, I agree with Barb Miller that we just need to have a brief discussion about the general consensus of this board.
So it's been moved and seconded that we postpone the meeting, this vote, for a date close to a week or so we can be in line with what the other counties are doing. Do I have a?
No, you're adding editorial.
Sorry,
you are-
but I just want to make sure that
Really,
everybody understands what's going
the
on.
motion, as I understand it, is just to delay consideration of this proposal to a later date. Probably should say no later than December 17th.
Correct.
Can't be that.
But that the board, if that's the will of the board, that's the will of the board.
And you ask for any more
Any more discussion on this?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes.
yeah, I'm going to vote against the motion. I don't know really actually what 2 weeks is going to buy us in terms of information that's going to change like what we think about this. I understand people's reticence, believe you me. But I don't think waiting another week, another 2 weeks, I don't know what we're going to gain by that. So I'm going to vote against the motion.
Well, I have a comment on that. I'd like to see this whole board in agreement when we go forward, not to be splintered, and that's my feeling. That's why I'm trying to put it in a short period of time so that we can do our homework or think over, sleep over it, or whatever the concern is for people here. That's my concern. I want us to go forward with this with cheer and happiness and make it happen.
in unanimity.
In anonymity. Yes, that's my comment.
May I?
Yes.
In discussion on that, Madam Chair? Hey, it's democracy. Getting a unanimous vote. But it's not clear to me at all what the pathway is and what we would need to do in the next 2 weeks to say, oh, okay, now it's kumbaya. I got these questions answered. I got this information that I didn't have before. So it's not clear to me at all what the pathway is towards, unanimity on this.
I think you, Mr. Killeen, deciding to not go with this is showing in itself that perhaps we're not all on the same understanding and pathway, and perhaps it does need to be a little bit of discussion. If we would like to approve this thing unanimously or to even get approval, I'm not sure that at this time the DIA has the support to get this approved, not just unanimously, but approved, period, with the board that sits here today. So maybe a small discussion among us will ensure that that happens for them, instead of saying we're going to take this vote right now, and as we were with the wage increases, so divided, and perhaps it gets shot down. Before we do that to our friends at the DIA, perhaps we need to have that discussion among us, and we're asking that we have some time to digest what was said today, the questions and answers that were discussed today among the board, so that we can, make the proper decision and give them perhaps what they're asking for, instead of yays and nays and everybody sweating at the table.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the question of raises is a moot question at this point. I think we have dealt with that. So I guess what I need to know is what are the outstanding issues that we need to wait on and come to consensus on. That's not what I'm clear about, is what in the next week or two we have to straighten out, that we have to, it's not clear to me what
Perhaps in a
we need a
meeting we can.
roadmap for this is what we need taken care of before we can come back and vote, and it's not clear to me what that is. So if we're going to postpone it, when we do this kind of stuff in public bodies, we go, okay, on the commission, okay, we need this, we need this, we need this before we're ready for a vote, and I'm not feeling that we need this, we need this, we need this, and have some specificity, so when we get back here in a week, 10, 12, whatever days, that we know that things, the objections raised have been spoken to, and especially with short time frames. I don't want to leave it, I don't want to have an ambiguity out there only to come back to the table in 2 weeks and we still have questions.
Lolita?
I think the attorney was specific about the timeline. Whatever we want to discuss or to come in alignment or answer our question, it's got to be done based upon that. And to your point, if it's something that you don't know, I think that's why it was brought up by one of the board members that got a couple more questions, but I'm a perfect agreement that it's better if we in one group saying something. We've got
a week is still, we still in the timeline. It's just a matter of us making to get together, and I think we're all entitled to agree to disagree and come back together and make the proper decision. I don't think it was any dissent here, just said, give me a couple more minutes. So I don't want us to get the impression that we're not doing what they want us to do. I think they want us to be all on board with the banner. You don't want me to just vote. You want me to walk around with, this is it. I'm with you 100%. And if it takes me asking a couple of questions, I don't think anybody is adverse to that. Everybody wants to be the first one to the table.
The only thing on that, Ms. Haley, is I'll say you used a catch-all phrase, whatever, in terms of questions. I would like to know whatever is, because on a short time frame, let's have some specific stuff that we can work out. I don't want to leave it kind of amorphous out there and undefined. The one specific thing that was raised was the raises. And again, I think that's a moot point. We took care of that in the amendment.
I'm not sure if I'm satisfied with the I don't think it's a moot point. That's one of the things that I would like to discuss with you guys.
So what protections are you looking for then?
I think that's a discussion that when we meet within the week. I'm sorry that you feel this way, Mr. Killeen. Usually you and I agree on some things, but if you would notice that Barb Miller brought up the point, this board, and I put the motion in place based on Barb Miller, and it's already been second, so you do understand that the voting could possibly not pass if we don't continue to have a discussion. So that's my concern.
Well, how deep do you want to reach on the wages then?
It's not just the wages. I have concerns that I would like to talk to this, to speak to with this whole Wayne County Board in a meeting based on the answers that we received today.
Okay.
We haven't discussed the answers that we received. We understood what the question is, should we approve for it to be on the ballot in March, but we have not discussed the answers that we received today. And I think in due fairness to this whole board, we should be able to discuss those answers that we received. That is all.
Well, I think we have that opportunity right now.
I think we should have that opportunity within a week.
Okay.
Are there any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion before us. Are you still going ahead with your motion, or are you reconsidering?
It's not my motion
No.
that's before us.
It's my motion that is
your
before
motion.
us. So
Oh,
I
sorry.
would like to continue with the motion to
Okay.
postpone and reconvene within a few
It was
days.
seconded by who?
I
By
second.
Lolita. So it's been moved and seconded that we not postpone, but I guess postpone the decision on this for approximately a week, not much longer than a week, and I hate to use that timeline, but to get everybody on board so that we can agree on bringing this forward on the ballot. Not bringing it forward, but voting for this, so we'll have the opportunity for Wayne County citizens to be included in the program.
Mhm.
So so it's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, too. Any opposition?
Nay.
Well, this is,
So
it's-
let's set the
so
next
it's-
meeting.
so that we need to set the next meeting right now.
I don't think it's.
And I do want us all to be in agreement. I personally
Absolutely.
think that it's a done deal. It just has to be ironed out. And we want to be the leader in this.
So let's set the next date.
So who's going to set the date, Tim? Are you? Or who wants to set the date right now?
Next Monday is the 15th.
I'm sorry?
Next Monday is the 15th, I think.
This coming Monday?
Next Monday
That's
is,
The
Friday.
11th
Oh.
is Monday.
The 11th, okay.
What about the 11th? Is that too soon? I mean, is that?
Monday.
That's this
Oh, yeah,
Monday.
this is Friday.
That's
Oh,
Veterans Day. Yep.
Okay, what about the 12th then? The 12th in the morning here, would that be? Would that be appropriate, 9 o'clock on the,
Excuse me.
I can't be here.
Okay.
okay, the 13th?
What about the
I'm sorry.
13th?
Well, I think we should, I think the maker of the motion should have some input here.
Okay, thank you.
You know, you're talking 3-4 days out. Is that going to satisfy what the maker of the motion was?
I think so. I think if we have this no longer than a week, I'm looking at the 13th, if that's an opportunity for everybody.
It's a Wednesday?
Would you want us here at that time?
I think so.
Yes.
Because we're going to have this discussion prior to the meeting.
Just a point of order, we have our annual board meeting starting at 10:30 that morning, preceded by an executive committee meeting. Some of us could be here, and some of us could be at that meeting. I'm just making that point. I won't be here because I'm chairing both of those meetings, but that morning, if you don't mind me not being here, I just make that point.
Yeah, I think that we would have a unanimous decision at that time, so it wouldn't be long, and it wouldn't be necessary for you to be here if that's okay with the rest of the board.
I just make that point. In the interest of time,
13th is,
Well,
13.
yes, Jim?
Well, I'm
13th is
also
good.
looking at commission staff here because that is committee days, this room at 9:30. I'll be in audit on that. But I do think we could perhaps use the room next door here. So, so is there any other constraints, Octavia, if we can use that room in terms of us securing a?
That room is available.
Okay.
There's no
All right,
constraints.
so we can do it on the 13th.
At 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock?
Which one?
I don't know, I'm asking.
10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is easier for us.
It's
Yeah,
easier
because
for
coming
us.
in from Romulus, 10 o'clock on the 13th.
Yes.
Okay.
Octavia, I want to thank you for your patience and also for helping us today.
No problem. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so we will then adjourn again on the 13th at 10 o'clock. Hopefully all happy and on deck,
Well,
on
we
board.
have to do, Madam Chair, we have to,
Okay, such other matters.
no,
Where the, on the
Yes.
agenda, such other matters from the public
well, not public yet, but
From the
any
properly
board
submitted.
member have such other matters for the DIA?
No, just I think if there's any additional information that you'd like to be prepared, graphs, charts, or anything in writing, please send that to us so we can be prepared to send that to you before the meeting.
And I would also like to add to that, if any of the board members have any questions, they don't have to wait till the 13th. They can call you or Salvador or Jean.
Yes.
I'm sure you will be available, or
yes.
Ms. McDonald,
We'll send Rob
or Mr. Bowen. Pardon me?
We'll send Rob to your house.
Okay. I'm sure that, and I appreciate your time and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to chair this meeting. And we have no other public comments.
Madam Chair, I'll just say on that what you have to say. If board members are going to call the DIA with additional questions, I'd ask that they also make the board chair aware of that.
Right.
So that when we get back here
Sure.
the next time,
Sure.
we know what the questions asked and answered would be for the whole board.
with the entire board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Could you designate a point person from this arts authority that we can communicate and send the replies to your questions? If any of you could gather the questions that you have for us before the meeting and send it to us, we can communicate with that person and that person can distribute all the answers to the entire arts authority. Would that be agreeable?
Yes, certainly yes.
How do you want to do that?
Yeah,
Do you want to,
it doesn't matter.
do you want to do that, Renata?
I can.
Okay. Why don't we have Renata responsible for that?
Absolutely. So we'll communicate directly with Renata.
So that means also for other board members, if you have questions, want to communicate with the DIA, we'll go through Renata.
Yes.
And then Renata will feed the answers back through.
And again, I just wanted to apologize to the board for, having to take this, for another week. But we do need to discuss these things before we present this. This is, to the taxpayers, and we are representing Wayne County on this. And I just want to make sure that we are all on board, either a yay or a nay for all of this. So
We understand and respect that.
It's a fair request, and we want to work with you and clarify any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do I have a meeting for adjournment? A motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by
Second.
Barbara, seconded by
Maria?
Maria. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for being so patient and for
Keep it
all
on your
your
schedule.
and your time. Do I have to go? through
Salvador,
Huh?
these today?
Betty and I would like to talk to you
what?
1
Go through all this
second.
today?
I guess we'll wait, but
Please.
set it up so the
Maybe I
next
can-
time you're down here.
I promise.
Otherwise,
You and I are going to talk to Salvador about the Wayne County.
otherwise, I carry around, and I might, instead of letting my cigarette on fire, I might let your paperwork on fire.
You and I are going to
I know, no, yeah.
You and I are going to talk to Salvador
Right.
about.
Yeah, where is he?
Here he is. I stopped him.
Okay. We want to talk